Dr. Robert Thornton arrived at Stephen Reeves' cabin just as the last log was set in place, his face dark with anger.
You are building a sealed coffin, Stephen. That room will kill your family.
Better a warm coffin than a frozen grave, Doctor.
Inside, Sarah watched through the frosty window, clutching Theo's shoulder.
You'll suffocate them with your own hands in that death box.
Last winter, Theo's lips turned blue in our drafty cabin. I will not watch that again.
Inside the cabin, Sarah knelt by the cold hearth, her lips moving in desperate prayer.
If anyone dies in there, I'll see you hanged for murder.
Stephen turned away and lifted the first glowing stone from the fire pit with iron tongs. He carried it into the stone room and placed it in the pit, sealing the heat inside with grim determination. That evening, Stephen led his wife, son, and dog into the stone room, the door sealing behind them with a heavy thud.
It's so close in here, Stephen. I can barely breathe.
The vent is open. It's not the cold that kills Sarah. It's moving air.
Theo coughed, a wet, rasping sound that had haunted the family for years. Stephen checked the small sliding vent, adjusting it to let in just enough fresh air. Buck lay near the glowing stones, his shaggy coat rising and falling with each peaceful breath. Hours passed. The family dozed, wrapped in blankets, the heat from the stones a steady, comforting presence unlike anything they'd known. When the first gray light of dawn seeped through the cracks, Stephen opened the door and stepped into the bitter cold. Outside, a few neighbors watched, murmuring. Thomas Grady shook his head and walked away, his face a mask of doubt.
The stones still hold their heat. The room works.
An early cold snap seized the valley. In the Grady cabin, frost lined the walls, and Margaret's fever rose dangerously.
I am going to get Stephen. That room stays warm. Hold on, Margaret.
Thomas pounded on Stephen's door until it swung open, his face raw with desperation.
Stephen, Margaret is dying from the cold. Please, let us use your stone room.
Stephen, the doctor will use any harm against you if this goes wrong.
I won't let her die when I have heat to give. Thomas, bring her here now.
They laid Margaret near the stones. The dog settled beside her as the room filled with dry warmth. By dawn, Margaret's fever broke. She opened her eyes, whispering thanks as Sarah held water to her lips. Dr. Robert appeared before noon, his spectacles fogged by his own rage.
This death box is a public danger. I'll see it condemned by the council before it claims a life.
As the cold deepened, a desperate family arrived at Stephen's door, carrying a pregnant woman shivering uncontrollably.
Stephen, her husband says their cabin is colder than the outside. She'll lose the baby if we don't help.
Bring her inside. The stones will hold. We'll make room.
Stephen, there are too many people now. The heat won't last the night.
Without a word, Stephen grabbed his tongs and stepped into the screaming wind, snow blinding his path. He dug fresh stones from the riverbank, his fingers going numb as he built up the fire pit outside. An hour later, he staggered back inside, arms full of glowing rocks, and the room's warmth swelled again. By morning, the woman's color returned, and her breathing steadied. The baby was safe, but in town, Dr. Robert was not idle. He gathered written testimonials against the room, building his case.
When the council meets, I'll have the signatures to tear that death trap down.
The town council convened in the dim meeting hall, lantern light carving hard shadows across their faces.
I have statements from families who say that sealed room nearly suffocated their loved ones. It is a coffin with a latch.
He held up the papers like a sword, his voice echoing against the timber walls.
And I have 2 people alive today because of that room. Margaret Grady was near death. The baby would have been lost. The room works.
The council members exchanged grim glances and spoke in low tones before the foreman stood. The stone room may remain for now, but if anyone perishes inside, it will be torn down and Stephen will face a jail cell.
Stephen, they have given you a noose. Please, close that room. Think of Theo.
If I close that door now, I might as well have let Theo freeze last year. We save who we can.
The warning hung over the cabin like frost on a window pane, thick and unyielding.
One wrong breath in that room. One mistake, and they will tear it down with my family still inside.
A few days after the council's verdict, the stone room was packed again when a child began coughing with a wet, tearing sound. The coughs grew desperate, and a woman shrieked that the sealed air was suffocating the boy. Stephen pushed through the crowd and slid the vent open another inch. Fresh, frigid air cut through the haze. Within a minute, the child's breathing steadied. Sarah held water to his lips. It had been a lingering cold, not suffocation. But outside, the story twisted. People whispered that a child had nearly died in the death box. Dr. Robert appeared, his voice carrying over the crowd. First a cough, next a corpse. That room is a grave.
You are twisting the truth, Doctor. That boy's lungs were sick before he stepped inside. The room didn't cause it. Stephen fixed it.
Fixed it. He nearly killed it. This is the proof. The council needs to shut that trap for good.
Some families packed up and left the stone room, their trust shattered by a single breathless moment.
One lie travels faster than 100 truths, and that lie might just hang me.
A few days later, the sky flattened into a slab of iron. A storm warning spread through the settlement faster than any rumor. Despite the lies, families with infants and elders appeared at the cabin, their fear of the storm greater than their fear of the room.
We can't turn them away, Stephen. Not with that outside.
We pack them in. The heat will fade faster tonight. I'll have to recharge the stones.
Hours later, as the wind shrieked, Stephen wrapped his face and stepped into the white chaos. Buck pushed ahead, pulling on a rope. By the fire pit, his fingers turned to wood as he dug half-frozen stones from the snow and rolled them into the coals. He barely made the return trip, Buck guiding him as the world disappeared into a howling white wall. He staggered inside, loaded the glowing rocks into the pit, and the room flared with heat. Sarah caught his arm.
You can't keep going out there, Stephen. The cold will take you before the council gets a chance.
If I don't, the storm takes them instead. I can't stop until it's over.
In the drafty Thornton cabin, the fire had died hours ago. Eloise sat motionless, her fingers blue and swollen.
All my medicines are useless against this cold. She's freezing in my arms.
Then he remembered Margaret Grady, near death from fever, but revived by the stone room's dry heat. He wrapped Eloise in every blanket he had and carried her into the screaming blizzard. He staggered through drifts to the stone room, his spectacles glazed with ice, barely able to speak.
Stephen, I was wrong about everything. Please, she's dying. Save her.
Bring her in. Lay her by the stones. Sarah will tend to her.
Inside the sweltering stone room, Sarah and the others made space near the glowing pit for the doctor's wife. Robert knelt beside her, watching the color creep back into her cheeks, his convictions dissolving with every breath she took.
The stones are saving her. The death box I condemned, it's giving her life.
Within a week, Eloise walked on her own again, the frostbite healing in the constant dry warmth. Robert watched, then began sending desperate patients to the room under cover of darkness. A delegation of townsfolk gathered outside the stone room, their faces hard with questions. Too many had left there alive to believe the doctor's old warnings.
I am not yet prepared to speak publicly. I am merely observing the outcomes.
Observing. My wife would be a corpse without this room. We all know you've been sending your own patients here.
Before the argument could continue, a shout came from the riverbank. Stephen had collapsed in the snow while trying to lift a fresh batch of stones. Thomas and Buck reached him first, dragging him inside as the dog pulled frantically at his sleeve.
Robert, please. He won't listen to reason. You are the only one who can help him now.
The man whose work I tried to destroy lies dying from his own mercy.
Robert knelt and worked over Stephen with the same hands that had signed the petition to destroy the room. His movements were sure, but his conscience was not. By dawn, Stephen's eyes opened to see the doctor still there, his spectacles fogged by a truth he could no longer deny. The town council reconvened with a single agenda: tear down the stone room before it claimed another life. Stephen stood before them, unsteady but unbowed.
You want to destroy the only room that has kept my family alive. You'll have to tear it down over my body.
The foreman called Dr. Thornton to testify. Robert stepped forward, his hands trembling on a sheaf of papers he hadn't looked at in days.
Wait, a boy from the outskirts was found frozen in the drifts. He's barely breathing.
Forget your vote. This child will die unless we use that room. Stephen, can you fire the stones?
I'll carry him myself. Open the doors.
Inside the packed stone room, the boy was laid beside the pit. The heat soaked into his limbs, color seeped back like dye into cloth. The council members crowded at the door, watching the impossible happen. The foreman slowly shook his head. This council will reconvene when tempers have cooled. This room is not what we were told. As the council left, Robert lingered by the child, his silence louder than any testimony. The whole truth remained locked behind his teeth. That night, in his own cold cabin, Robert stared at the wall where the reflection of the stones still seemed to glow.
Robert, you watched the stones save my hands. How long will you let pride stand between this town and the truth?
He opened his worn leather journal and thumbed through pages of his own handwriting. Recoveries, lowered fevers, frostbite reversed. He read his own notes. Patient Eloise Thornton, frostbite resolved in 3 days. No gangrene. Dry heat unlike any medical treatment. He knelt beside the cold hearth and prayed for the first time in years, asking for the courage to undo the damage his words had done. By dawn light, he took a fresh piece of foolscap and wrote a confession, his hand unsteady but the words unflinching. Outside, the news of the Frozen Boys revival spread like wildfire. Families no longer waited for the doctor's permission. By noon, the stone room was a bustling ward filled with the ragged, the shivering, and the sick who had given up on waiting for the doctor's blessing.
We can't turn them away, not now. They've seen what it can do. The doctor's silence won't mean anything soon.
I've become the obstacle. The truth is here, and I must be the one to speak it before it's too late.
The council reconvened in a grim silence. Robert stood with his confession folded in his coat, ready to speak the truth that had nearly choked him. But before he could speak, a neighbor pulled a woman forward, coins still warm in his palm, and she began a rehearsed lie. My baby turned blue inside that death trap. The air was poison. I barely got him out alive, the council murmured. A few voices demanded the room be closed forever. The foreman raised his hand to call the vote.
Wait, that woman is lying for coin. I watched her child choke on stale air long before the stone room.
Before the argument could boil over, a messenger burst through the door, clutching a telegram and gasping from the cold ride. From Dr. Alistair Crane, Boston. Dry heat therapy confirmed effective. No suffocation risk with minimal ventilation. Compile your evidence and I endorse. The council sat stunned. The foreman lowered his hand. Even those who had shouted for destruction now looked uncertain. This council will reconvene in 1 week. Dr. Thornton will compile all records of recovery. Until then, the stone room stays.
1 week. Can you do it, doctor? Prove the room that you called a coffin is the very thing that saved your wife.
The stone room transformed into a formal infirmary within hours. Every cot filled, a logbook opened, and Dr. Thornton took notes without pause.
Patient Grady, fever resolved in 8 hours. Patient Thornton, frostbite reversed. No tissue loss. Temperature inside room, consistent 34 degrees Celsius.
Numbers and logs, doctor. But those stones still need to be fired, and my arms are the only engine this room has.
You both need rest. Let me and the women manage the soup and the blankets. You have to save your strength for the stones.
Theo slept peacefully in a corner, cradled by the warm air that had once been his near-killer. Buck dozed at his feet. Each morning brought new patients. Severe frostbite that would have meant amputation healed. Fevers that had killed dozens in drafty cabins broke in hours.
Stephen, I have enough evidence. The council cannot ignore documented recoveries, but I need the perfect moment to present it.
The perfect moment was when your wife opened her eyes. The next one might be when I can't lift the tongs anymore.
The sun rose on the 7th day. The stone room glowed with life and heat, but Robert's public endorsement still hung silent. The council's hour had come.
I have the proof. Now I only need the words and the courage to say them.
The council chamber filled with the same men who had once called for Stephen's arrest. Dr. Thornton walked to the center, his journal heavy in his hand.
I was wrong. I called this room a death box because I feared what I did not understand, but my own wife would be dead without it. Here are the records. 23 cases of frostbite healed, 15 fevers broken, 0 suffocations. The stones save lives more surely than any medicine I possess. I asked this council not just to spare the room, but to endorse it as a public health measure. Let families build their own. Let the death box become a life shelter.
The foreman stared at the journal, its pages thick with ink. Some councilmen nodded, others still scowled.
You heard him. Margaret is alive because of that room. How many more need to die before you believe?
But a hard-faced councilman rose, holding the old petition. We have a telegram, but where is the long-term proof? This could still be a danger next winter. Before Robert could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Stephen had collapsed again, his body finally broken by the endless cycle of heat and cold.
He gave everything for this room. Don't let him wake up to find you've torn it down.
This council cannot wait for more proof. Delay is death. I stake my medical license on this. The Hot Rock room is safe and necessary.
The foreman called for a vote. Hands rose slowly, a perfect deadlock, 10 for approval, 10 against. The chamber seemed to hold its breath.
If my word isn't enough, send the data to Dr. Crane in Boston. Let an impartial expert decide.
The hard-faced councilman stepped forward. And if Crane dams this death box, you'll tear it down with your own hands.
If any reputable physician finds fault with my records, I'll dismantle the room myself, but give the evidence a fair reading.
The foreman nodded slowly and called for a new vote to postpone the ban until Crane's reply arrived. The motion passed, 12-8. They carried Stephen back to the stone room and laid him beside the glowing pit. His breathing steadied, but his eyes remained closed.
They're still dragging their feet. If Crane's answer doesn't come before the next freeze, we're back to burning our furniture for heat.
I've gambled my career on a telegraph wire. If Crane condemns us, I'll have nothing left. No authority, no future.
The stones saved my hands. Let me tend to Stephen now. Heat and rest will bring him back.
The room hummed with quiet hope. But outside, the wind began to rise again. Another storm was gathering over the valley. The blizzard struck before dawn. A white wall of ice that erased the world outside. The telegraph wires snapped within the hour, leaving the valley cut off.
No word from Crane for weeks now. If this storm doesn't break, we'll be out of dry wood before his reply arrives.
Stephen lay motionless, his breathing shallow. Sarah pressed a damp cloth to his forehead, her prayers now silent.
Without the telegraph, my endorsement means nothing to the council. The room's fate still hangs on their vote, and they have no reason to trust us now.
Then we keep it running on our own. Stephen can't lift the tongs, so I will. The stones don't care who fires them.
Robert donned a heavy coat and followed Thomas outside. Buck strained ahead, and the two men fought the gale to reach the fire pit. Robert slipped on the ice, his spectacles flying into the drifts. Thomas caught him before he went under, but the old doctor was shivering violently. Somehow, they dragged a batch of hot stones back inside. The room flared with life, but Robert collapsed near the pit, his hands blue.
The stones will warm him, just as they warmed me. But if we can't get word to the council, they'll never know he risked his life for this room.
The storm screamed for 3 days. No message could get out. The stone room held, but its defenders were falling one by one. On the 4th morning, the wind died enough to reveal a line of dark figures trudging through the drifts toward the stone room.
It's the council, Stephen, half frozen. Every one of them. Their hall collapsed in the storm.
Let them in, even the men who wanted to hang me.
The councilmen stumbled inside, their faces raw with frost and shame, and found themselves surrounded by the very people they had condemned to freeze.
You wanted to tear this death box down. Now it's the only thing keeping you from a frozen grave.
The foreman dropped to his knees by the pit, unable to meet the eyes of the patients he had called liars.
The vote can wait. For now, we share the warmth.
Sarah and Eloise handed out bowls of broth to the frozen men, moving among them with a grace that only deepened their silent guilt.
You wanted proof, Councilman. Here it is. Not just ink on paper, but a room that saves the men who came to bury it.
By the time the storm lifted completely, the council had already lived the verdict they had postponed. The stone room had tried them all. The council reconvened inside the very room they had condemned, the glowing stones now their only source of heat and light.
I have a telegram from Dr. Crane. The hot rock method is sound, safe, and superior to any drafty hearth. I endorse it without reservation. I called it a death box, but this room has saved more lives than all my medicines combined. I was wrong, and I am sorry.
You helped keep it alive when I couldn't. That's all the apology I need.
The foreman called a final vote. Every hand rose in favor. The death box was now a public health measure, to be replicated across the valley. As winter's grip loosened, families began clearing ground for their own stone rooms, following Stephen's simple design.
Margaret's room will be the first finished next winter. We'll be the ones offering refuge.
Robert has been teaching the men how to check the vent ratios. He's become the room's greatest champion.
Theo hasn't coughed in weeks. The stones gave him back his boyhood.
One by one, plumes of steam rose from cabins across the valley. The death box had become a life shelter, and the winter was never the same. On the first warm Sunday of spring, the town gathered in the square to hear Dr. Thornton's final word on the stone room.
This winter, the stone room saved 37 souls. My medicine saved 6. The stones are the better physician. Stephen Reeves, you showed us that a sealed room with hot rocks could defeat winter. I am renaming it the Reeves Shelter, and I will teach its construction to any who ask.
Call it what you like. Just keep building them.
By summer, 10 new cabins had stone rooms. The Reeves family walked through the settlement and saw chimneys venting steam from every direction.
I was so afraid this room would take you from me. Instead, it gave you back to us.
Theo had grown strong, his cheeks ruddy, his lungs clear. He and Buck chased each other through the new spring grass.
I'll never let pride blind me again. The stones taught me more about healing than my books ever did.
In the valley, the snow melted into streams, carrying away the last bitterness of a hard-won season. The death box had become the valley's heart, and the man who built it could finally rest. The following winter, the first hard freeze arrived with a familiar bite, but the valley's cabins no longer trembled against the cold.
Margaret and I brought venison stew. Thought the stone room could use a proper meal for once.
I stopped counting the rooms at 22, but I still come back to this one when I need to remember what humility feels like.
We have more to give thanks for this year than ever before, and it started with a pile of river stones.
The stones only held the heat. The people held each other. That's what finally changed the valley.
My fever broke in this room. I'll never forget the feeling of warmth stealing back into my bones.
Outside, the valley lay buried in fresh snow, but from a dozen chimneys, steam rose in steady columns, a silent testament.
Robert was going to tear this room down. Now he spends more time in them than in his own house.
They called it a death box. But when the long winter closed in, it was the only warm room in the entire valley. And in that simple truth, the valley found a warmth that no drafty hearth could ever match. In the deep midwinter, the Reeves cabin glowed from within, the stone room's heat seeping gently into the main house.
Another season, and still the snow can't touch us. Theo, are you warm enough?
I am never cold anymore, Ma. Buck likes it by the stones.
That's all I ever wanted. A room where the cold can't find my boy.
Through the frosted window, the valley lay still, a dozen other cabins mimicking the small plume of steam that marked their home. Inside the stone room, the river stones still glowed, their heat a quiet promise that had rewritten the fate of a settlement. Stephen and Robert, once bitter opponents, now sat together in its warmth, their children playing at their feet. The memory of bitter accusations had melted with the spring snow, leaving only gratitude and the smell of wood smoke. A bird sang from a branch freed of ice, its voice carrying over the valley like a benediction. The Reeves family season ended not with a dramatic event, but with a quiet certainty that the valley had learned to keep itself alive. Spring deepened, and the valley remembered its green. The stone rooms stood as permanent witnesses to a winter that had almost won.
Look at those chimneys, Stephen. Every one of them means a child who won't cough through the night.
That was all I ever wanted. The rest was just stones and stubbornness.
And a stubborn doctor who had to be dragged through a blizzard to learn what you knew all along.
Theo and Buck tumbled through the fresh grass, the boys' laughter carrying far beyond the garden fence. At dusk, the family gathered in the stone room, not from necessity, but from habit. The warmth had become their hearth. The stones still held the heat from the morning's fire, their orange pulse a quiet companion in the silence. Outside, the valley settled into another season, its scars healed, its cabins breathing steam into the cold air. The stone room was never just a room. It was the idea that even the harshest winter could be endured together. They called it a death box. It became their warmest welcome,